I am at the Belvedere Museum in Vienna, Austria, the former palace, or should I say palaces, of Prince Eugene of Savoy. In this video, we are going to visit the Klimt, inspired by Van Gogh, Rodin, and Matisse special exhibition in the Lower Belvedere. The Lower Belvedere was the original palace, completed in 1716 along with the surrounding gardens. It is smaller and less known than the Upper Belvedere, but it is still a Baroque masterpiece. Back in 1903, it was converted into Austria's first state-run modern art gallery, heavily influenced by the Vienna Secession, so works by Claude Monet, Vincent Van Gogh, and other artists that we'll see inside were even being displayed here over 100 years ago. Then after World War I, it was converted into the Baroque Museum, with a modern gallery in the Orangery. Now it is used for special exhibitions, so let's head inside and explore the artistic inspirations of Gustav Klimt, along with a lot of his own work, in this high-profile exhibition. Gustav Klimt was trained in the classical style, and opened an independent studio in the 1880s with his younger brother and a friend. They received several major historicist mural commissions for the new constructions on the Ringstrasse, at the Kunsthistorisches Museum and the Burgtheater. Here is one example of the mid-1880s ceiling paintings for the Grand Staircase at the Burgtheater, as this is Klimt's study for the Altar of Dionysus panel. It is done in the popular classical style of that time, influenced by the painter Prince Hans Machertz, who did this study for the Grand Staircase of the Kunsthistorisches Museum, depicting Rembrandts. Both Gustav and Ernst Klimt, as well as their partner Max Merz, also made paintings like this in between the columns at the Art History Museum. That is another more classical scene by Klimt, of a Roman woman's bath. Of course there is still a nude woman though. Some things wouldn't change. The star Dutch-British artist, Laurens Alma Tadema, was really the one who changed Klimt's perspective on art, and Klimt would have seen this piece, A Silent Counselor, in 1893 when it was exhibited at the Vienna Künstlerhaus. His classical simplicity appeared extremely modern to Klimt, so he would emulate that in his style. Klimt was fascinated with the exotic, including the art of ancient Egypt and Babylon, which is evident in one of the Belvedere's most famous works, Judith. The biblical Judith is depicted here as a femme fatale, after outwitting and beheading her enemy Holofernes. The trees in the background are derived from an Assyrian relief at Nineveh, which makes sense since Holofernes was the commander of an Assyrian army. Judith is holding his decapitated head, but she is a bit distracting from that. It is also the earliest surviving painting in which he used real gold leaf. It has a fantastic custom frame that was made by Klimt's brother Georg. Next to Judith is Sin, a similar but earlier piece by Franz von Stuck. It's actually one of his more famous works. He was the Munich Secession's equivalent to Klimt, and a version of this painting was shown at a Vienna Secession exhibition in 1898. This femme fatale has a snake wrapped around her neck. This is the goddess of wisdom, the protector of the arts called Pallas Athene. Gustav Klimt painted this in 1898. This was essentially a painted declaration of war towards the Künstlerhaus, Vienna's main academic art society, which Klimt and others left to found the Secession, where they would exhibit the latest international arts in Vienna. Klimt again used Athena in this poster for the first exhibition of the Vienna Secession. Actually, this is the censored version, as Klimt had to put a tree in front of the naked man's crotch in order to offend less people. Here's an illustration by Fernand Knopf, the important Belgian symbolist artist. It is called The Red Lips. His subliminal and mythical works impressed Klimt, who imbued those same elements in his own paintings. This is Giovanni Segantini's Angel of Life. He was another admired symbolist artist. This is called Life is a Struggle, or The Golden Knight, a 1903 Klimt piece, one of the first in which he used gold leaf. Here's an 1890 portrait of Joseph Pembauer by Klimt. It is not as creative as his other ones, but there's signs of where he was going, and the frame is fantastic. These are angelic figure textile panels by Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh, one of the Glasgow Four, whose works Klimt saw at the 1899 Venice Biennale, then hosted at the Secession in 1900. These embroidered panels influenced the design of his Beethoven frieze. They actually have a partial copy of the Beethoven frieze, which Klimt created for the Beethoven Monument at the Secession building, for which several different artists worked to create a total work of art. His frieze was by far the most controversial aspect of the otherwise acclaimed exhibit. The real one still exists at the Secession, but I did not have a chance to see it on this visit. Here's a study for the Beethoven frieze of a man in the Suffering of Weak Humanity tableau. This is Emotion by Ferdinand Hodler, a title which transforms this woman into an allegorical embodiment of a feeling. This is Georges Mine's Solidarity. The plaster version of the sculpture was exhibited at the Secession in 1900. And here is a chalk and charcoal illustration by Sascha Schneider that was exhibited in 1899. From 1900 on with the Secession, Klimt studied symbolism and Art Nouveau, especially the inherent linear approach and simplistic forms. These are the water nymphs, or silverfish, which Klimt worked on from 1901 to 1903. He did use gold leaf in this unusual painting. This is called Will-o'-the-Wisps, a rarely seen Klimt from 1903. It is quite a small canvas surrounded by an oversized frame. That was an interesting choice. This is another work by Scotland's Art Nouveau innovator, Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh, called June Roses from 1898. At the 8th Secession exhibition in 1900, they had a room dedicated to the Glasgow Four, where they displayed Mackintosh's May Queen frieze, which heavily influenced the Beethoven frieze just a few months later. This piece is titled Girlfriends, or Water Serpents 1, done in 1904. These serpent women and their elongated figures were definitely inspired by Mackintosh. This is a fantastic work of Gustav Klimt, The Water Serpents 2. This was his second attempt at making a colorful, dreamy water nymph scene. This one is much bigger and different from the other one. The bodies of these women recall the one in Franz von Stuck's Sin. Wilhelm and Jenny Steiner acquired this painting from Klimt in 1911, but Jenny was Jewish, so the Nazis did seize their art collection and sold it on the market, and in 1940, Gustav Klimt's illegitimate son got a hold of it. It is still in a private collection, so this is really great to see. The exhibition rooms are separated by the Marble Hall, Prince Eugene's incredibly intricate receiving chamber. There is an apotheosis of Prince Eugene fresco on the ceiling, as well as a marble sculpture of the same subject. This provides a unique break from the exhibit. Moving on to portraiture, this is Gustav Klimt's depiction of Sonja Nips, painted between 1897 and 98. Its somewhat muted hues are reminiscent of the portraiture of James McNeill Whistler. They did have a Whistler portrait on display, but photos were not allowed of that one piece for some reason, which is pretty ridiculous. Klimt particularly admired Whistler. This is a portrait by Theo van Rijsenberghe, a co-founder of the Belgian avant-garde group Les Vents. Klimt saw this and liked the use of ornamental color. Here is Klimt's portrait of his lifelong companion and muse, Emilia Floge, in a colorful peacock dress from 1902. She did not like this portrait because Klimt used a little too much imagination for her liking. And there is Klimt's signature in a gold box. This is a portrait of a woman by Klimt from 1893, which has many similarities to a Sargeant portrait. And this is pretty neat to see. John Singer Sargeant's preliminary study for Madame X that he did in 1884. His sensual portrait of Madame X stirred an outrage at the Paris Salon and ruined the life of the sitter, while nearly ruining Sargeant's career as well. Klimt was on the receiving end of similar reactions for similar reasons. Here is A Girl in the Foliage by Gustav Klimt, painted in 1898. That is a portrait by Edmond de Mongeon. The French painter was close friends with Georges Seurat, though did not follow his pointillist style, and instead developed a dreamy and poetic atmosphere in his works, similar to what Klimt was doing around the same time. This is a study for Schubert at the piano by Gustav Klimt. Schubert was Klimt's favorite composer, but sadly the real painting was destroyed by Nazis. There are landscapes by many great avant-garde artists in the next room. First off, here is a Monet. This is a branch of the Seine near Giverny, a misty scene painted in 1897. Klimt first encountered Monet's paintings in that year, shortly before he started doing his own landscapes. That one is a Morning by the Pond painted by Klimt in 1899. It actually quite resembles the Monet. Here is Still Water by Fernand Knopf, which was exhibited at the Secession in 1898. And this is another Klimt landscape, Lakeshore with Birches from 1901. Notice that most of Klimt's landscapes are on perfectly square canvases. Theo van Rijsselbergen made this pointillist scene of Pointe Saint-Pierre in Saint-Tropez around 1896. It was exhibited at the Secession in 1899. There was also a work by the pointillist master himself called La Luzerne, Saint Denis, but no photos were allowed of that one either. So juxtaposed next to those is this fantastic Gustav Klimt landscape, Flowering Poppies from 1907, which definitely has some pointillistic elements to it. This is a work of Vincent Van Gogh, The Orchard in Blossom, a scene he captured near Arles, then improved upon from memory at Saint Remy. This was exhibited in Vienna in 1906, so Klimt surely saw this in person. And here is a classic Cezanne landscape of the view of L'Estaque and the Château d'If, painted between 1883 and 1885. Like Van Gogh, he was not much appreciated in life. However, his works were exhibited at the Vienna Secession while he was still around. Klimt and others here in Vienna were able to recognize his importance. Sandwiched between the Van Gogh and Cezanne is one of Gustav Klimt's most famous landscapes, the Avenue to Schloss Kammer, painted in 1912. The vibrant colors and bold contrast recall Van Gogh's style, while the interplay of the green hues in the foliage and the interpretation between surface and depth is a subtle hint at potential Cezanne influence. That is the Inn in Oshwand, painted in 1906 by Kuno Amietz. Here is another Vincent van Gogh piece, titled Field with Irises near Arles, which he painted in 1888, as he was infatuated with the bright colors in the south of France. And here's a 1913 Italian garden landscape by Klimt, again showing some stylistic similarities to Van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh, who had been dead for 13 years, first became familiar to the Viennese in 1903 when 5 of his works were exhibited at the Vienna Secession's Impressionism exhibits. There was also a 1906 Van Gogh retrospective in Vienna. That's an original catalog from that. Here is a work that was exhibited in that 1906 show, The Boulevard de Clichy, a small Paris scene from 1887. Auguste Rodin also had a crucial influence on Klimt with his innovative and expressive sculptures of the human body that added an impression of movement, which Klimt often captured in his own images. Rodin's sculpture was exhibited in the very first Secession exhibition in 1898. This marble sculpture of a Danaid was exhibited at the 1893 Munich Secession. Here they compare original drawings and studies of the human body by Auguste Rodin and Gustav Klimt, which are actually really similar. Rodin visited the Secessionists in 1902 and was reportedly enthusiastic about Klimt's Beethoven frieze, unlike most people. And this is a marble sculpture by Rodin of Youth Triumphant, which he made in 1894 and exhibited at the Vienna Secession in 1898. Klimt also appreciated the linear, bold black and white contrasts in French poster art of the late 19th century. For example, here is a poster by Pierre Bernard of the Nabi group. Klimt was a big fan of the Nabi. Compare that with this Gustav Klimt illustration of a lady with a plumed hat from 1908. This is a poster for the Toulouse-Lautrec exhibition at Vienna's Galerie Mietke in 1909. The simplicity of Toulouse-Lautrec prints, with their bold planes of color, influenced Klimt's style in paintings like this one. It is called Friends 1 or The Sisters, painted in 1907. It is composed of flat lines, much like Toulouse-Lautrec's work, with all the sense of space and three-dimensional forms eliminated. Here is a study of these standing lovers in Klimt's Stockley frieze at the Palais Stockley in Brussels. Gustav Klimt visited Paris in 1909 and was impressed by the radical color and form experiments of the Fauvists, which inspired a noticeable increase of intense coloration in Klimt's latter works. This Klimt piece depicts Rhea Monk on her deathbed, made in 1912. This is a colorful portrait of a Zouave by Vincent Van Gogh, painted in 1888. Van Gogh found a Zouave, a member of a North African regiment known for their unusual Turkish-style uniforms, to model for him in Arles. Van Gogh wasn't happy with his two portraits, but Klimt saw the full-body version of this in 1906 and was impressed. Here is Klimt's portrait of Johanna Staud, painted from 1917 to 18. It was one of his last commissioned portraits, and starkly different from his more famous ornament-filled earlier portraits. It is juxtaposed by this portrait by Henri Matisse, The Girl with the Green Eyes, made in 1908. Klimt and Matisse were both enthusiastic about the decorative qualities of Asian art, so this girl is wearing a Chinese tunic. Klimt would often wear kimonos himself. Here is a 1913 Klimt portrait of Eugenia Primavesi, which clearly demonstrates Klimt's transition to an expressive vibrancy in the latter years of his career as he looked to the Fauves for inspiration. This is Kees van Dogen's Woman with a Green Necklace, another Fauvist example. Klimt was also inspired by the Norwegian expressivist Edvard Munch, who painted this summer night on the beach between 1902 and 1903. Now this painting used to be a part of the Belvedere's collection. However, it was restituted. The stepfather of the owner who had fled the Nazis in 1938 sold the work to the museum without the owner's consent, so a granddaughter was able to reclaim the painting in 2007. But here it is once again on display at the Belvedere. This is The Bride, in which Klimt combines aspects of Rodin's sensual figures with the dark contours and Japanese woodcut-inspired aspects of Van Gogh and Toulouse-Lautrec. This work was found left unfinished on the easel in Gustav Klimt's studio when he passed away on February 6, 1918. So that was a really well done exhibition analyzing the artistic inspiration of Gustav Klimt and demonstrating how he was always engaging with new developments throughout Europe and incorporating those elements into his evolving body of work. I hope you enjoyed this tour through the exhibit. If you did, then you may appreciate my other content. I have video tours on all sorts of art museums and exhibitions, along with a variety of attractions across Europe and America. I do have a separate video on the Belvedere itself and the Austrian gallery. That video is linked in the description. Other famous Klimt works like The Kiss are featured in that. I even visited Klimt's grave at Heidsieck Cemetery. So there are plenty of videos to choose from. Also, please consider liking this video, sharing it, and subscribing to my channel for more. Thanks for watching!